All right. In your speech, you asked the question that in a democracy, how could you be guaranteed that the system was going to allow the best leader to be elected? How could you guarantee that in communism that the leader chosen to run the government is the best leader?
Well, in my speech, I didn't mention anything about a communist leader. I was just simply making a remark that you can't ensure anything, and although people claim that the best leader is being chosen just because the people are picking it, that doesn't mean that they're well informed or he or she is even accurate in the information they're saying.
Well, what is the safeguard in communism in regards to preventing one leader from a very corrupt leader from coming to power?
Well, as I say in my speech, in the long term, usually as history shows, communist leaders are out to protect the country. And even though they do some things like take away liberties, they do many benefits like equalize everybody and get rid of the class system.
So you feel that everybody is equal and that people shouldn't be allowed to express their differences?
Well, I didn't say anything about expressing differences. They're just equal in wealth and no one's lesser than someone else.
So how could you promote businesses and entrepreneurship in communism if everybody is getting the same?
What do you mean? Everybody's getting enough to survive. So obviously they do have money to keep the economic system going.
But what would be people's motivation for creating a business and
What do
doing
you
an
mean?
entrepreneurship?
Why wouldn't they?
Why would if someone is not going, if they're going to get paid the same amount of money regardless of the job they work, what is their motivation to try to start their own business?
Well, they wouldn't really need a motivation because if they grew up in a communist society, they'd just overlook it. And it would just be something that if they were really passionate about, they'd do.
So you feel that people, when they select their jobs, they select it solely based on what they enjoy doing, and salaries play no important factor in
No,
their job?
they do, but it's enough. Usually, in cases, as long as it's enough to get you by and you have a decent amount of money, what difference does it make?
Okay. How can you... Okay, your closing remark to the speech was, like any government, communism works if the people are willing to make it work. How can you guarantee that the people are going to be willing to make communism work?
How can you guarantee they're not going to? Well, if obviously if they're passionate about it and if they grow up in it and they're taught about it, they might and they like it. Obviously, they're going to work for the betterment of their country because it promotes it.
And you also talked about a perfect world that everyone would have food and shelter, and how is communism going to provide that?
Well, I didn't say that communism is going to provide a perfect world if you read my speech carefully.
Said right here.
Communism is the only one that tries to create a utopia. It's not exactly, obviously nothing's perfect, so it isn't completely perfect. Not everybody has those things, but it's the only government system working towards it.
But so you think wait. So it's the only government system and democracy doesn't work towards the better benefit of people?
No. Obviously, if there's people dying on the street and it's because of competition, no one's equal. If there's so many classes, communism gets rid of classes so people are equal, unlike democracy who does the exact opposite and creates them.
So you feel that just as long if everyone is created equal, that it doesn't people's rights and rights is just freedom of religion and speech and the opportunity to organize and demonstrate, those aren't important just as long as people have a house?
I never said that.
But wouldn't communism take away certain rights?
No, not always is it guaranteed. No.
But doesn't communism take away a lot of liberties? So
Isn't
how
that
is
happening in democracy?
Not necessarily. Democracy allows people to have those rights and
So
it protects
people can, but in democracy, aren't not people allowed to say stuff against the government? Is that kind of illegal?
People are allowed to say stuff against the government. They're given the opportunity to organize.
But not during the time of war. So why aren't they allowed to?
That's under certain democracies. Each democracy is different.
What certain democracy? It happens here, and the U.S. is the biggest example of democracy.
But that's only one form of democracy. As I stated in my speech, democracies are they have a lot of differences and they vary.
Actually, there's only 5 big countries that do it, and essentially they draw from the certain statistics, and they're basically the same format.
Exactly. They have similar principles, but in the same time, as I stated in my speech, democracy isn't based on certain fundamental practices. They go on certain principles, so there are changes from democracy to democracy.
Okay.